Welcome to my garden. I'm Liz Davey, and today we're going to take a walk in the garden. This is an episode in a series on NCTV in Norfolk, and it is filmed in my garden approximately every 2 weeks. We started in March, at the end of March, and we've watched the garden as it progressed. Things bloomed and were planted, weeded, harvesting. We've gone through a whole garden series, and we will continue with it until the garden is gone this fall. Today we're starting in my herb garden, as I usually do, and it's time to harvest herbs. The best time to harvest them is right before they go to seed. And this is oregano, and I will be harvesting that by just cutting stems, and the more you harvest, the more it will continue to grow. So we'll cut a good number of stems of the oregano. And then I'm going to rubber band it together. Rubber bands work better than string, and you'll see why a little later. As this herb dries, if you use string to tie it now, by the time it dries, the string and the branches and leaves dry out, your string won't be tight anymore and they won't stay in tight clumps. We're going to hang this up later. The other one that's very ready is the tarragon. Again, you want to catch them right before they're ready to put on their blooms. In the morning, right after the dew has dried, is a great time to pick them. Smell the essential oils that are in the herbs. You can also pick lavender now to dry. It's in full bloom. I have lavender plants both here and in my perennial garden. And lavender makes a lovely room freshening bouquet. As well as dried, it will make nice sachets, and also can be used in cooking. Lavender is one of the edible flowers, and you can see it down here. And we'll be picking that for drying soon. And we'll pick long stems. And again, rubber band it together for drying. You don't want your bunches to be too big or it won't dry properly. So just a small bunch, and you can make multiple bunches. The roses in the herb garden are pretty much gone, as are the chives, but we have plenty of thyme and mint that can be picked, and we can enjoy the herbs in lots of our cooked dishes. I also have planted annual herbs down in my vegetable garden, which we'll see later. We have parsley down there and all kinds of basil. They aren't quite ready yet. The parsley's getting there. We're still using parsley from the parsley that was planted last year. It's almost ready to go to seed, and I will let it go to seed in hopes that some may come up. Now let's move on to the perennial garden. The perennial garden at my house has its best season in early June, early to mid-June, and we're now into July. The real problem with perennial gardens is that each perennial generally blooms about once a season. There are some that will rebloom if you deadhead the flowers. That means cutting off the dead blooms. But generally they have one great flush of bloom per season. So the challenge in a perennial garden is to have something blooming at all times, which means you have to plant plants and intersperse things that will bloom at different times during the garden season. Right now, we have some of the things that bloom in the summer, but the main thing we have coming are lilies. And I have both daylilies and lilies from a bulb, both oriental and the hybrid lilies. The difference between the two is that these lilies come from a bulb, and these are the day lilies. Day lilies, the blooms will bloom and stay but a day, but they have tons of blooms. Some will bloom longer than others. The Stellodoro and some of the newer, shorter lilies bloom almost continuously from now until fall, and they're very nice to have in the garden. If you've watched for those lily beetles, and continue to watch, because if you missed a few, the larvae of those beetles are now chewing up lily foliage. And I don't see any in this area of the garden, but in another area I have had a few that must have escaped my squashing, and I've had to squash the larvae because they will eat the leaves on the lilies. Day lilies are not bothered by that sort of thing, just the oriental and the hybrid lilies. Echinacea will soon be in bloom. That's another one that blooms a little later. But daylilies and lilies can carry you over the awkward season in the garden. Shasta daisies are now in bloom. The Shasta daisies are coming into bloom, and they will have they stay in bloom for several weeks. Next to them I have some asters, which will bloom in the fall. The poppy has finished blooming, and in fact the foliage is dying back. This spot will probably be completely empty in another month. A nice place to add a chrysanthemum just for the fall. More lilies over this way. We have Veronica, which are the blue stalks back here, and some more daylilies interspersed, and the knockout rose that we pruned back so drastically in the spring due to the winter dieback, and it's come back. This is a salvia called Purple Rain. It's a little bit different than most salvias, but it does add a nice touch of color to the summer garden. It's almost the 4th of July, and we talked about pinching back chrysanthemums that have been in the garden from last year. This is your last chance to pinch them back before they set their buds for this fall's bloom. You'll notice this is staying fairly compact. If I had not been pinching it back at about monthly intervals, this chrysanthemum by now would be up here and sprawling all over the place. As it is, it's going to stay rather compact, and it has quite a few spots that are going to form buds. So just pinch out the growing tips, and that's all there is to it. And that will help it bloom nicely in another month or so. Again, we have more daylilies along the edge. And this is lamb's ear, which is going into bloom. Once it has completed its little bloom, I will cut those stalks off, and we'll continue to enjoy the gray foliage, fuzzy foliage of the lamb's ears throughout the season. Most of the bulb foliage has been removed, and over the next week or so, if this heat continues, the rest of it will be gone. Any holes that we have, we can then fill with either potted plants or annuals. Most of the stores have now switched to selling annuals that are in larger sized containers rather than the small 6-packs. Also, if you intended to plant some seeds for fall, you should get out and get them this week. Around the 1st of July through the 4th of July, most seed companies return to the stores and take the seeds that they put there to be sold this spring. Therefore, there won't be any seeds to plant. Very few wait until later. I think Agway has one seed company they said didn't pick them up until later in July. But don't wait too long if you want to plant fall spinach or lettuce and you don't already have the seeds. Let's move to the vegetable garden. The peas that we planted in April are ready to be picked. These are the snow peas, and we've been enjoying those the last week or so, and you need to check them very often. You'll find snow peas bloom very quickly. They're starting to yellow at the bottom already, But basically you just pick off the peas as they ripen. You don't want to get them too ripe. If you find one that's gotten away from you and formed actual peas inside, take it off and throw it away. And they will keep going as long as the temperatures don't get too hot. We also have snap peas, and the snap peas actually, you wait until the pod is somewhat filled to pick those. You can see there's a difference in the foliage, so I can tell which are which. And again, they ripen fairly fast, so you need to check them every couple days at least. And we don't have too many of them, but enough for a couple meals. And they're best fresh. We saute the snap peas and the snow peas we use in stir fries. There's a couple that are getting pretty fat. And again, they hide, so it helps if you shake the foliage a little bit, and then you can see the peas shaking and pick them. We'll probably have a few more on these. Now, the other peas that we have further down are the shell peas, and they're almost ready, but we'll wait on those until the shells are completely filled. They aren't filled completely yet, and it looks like we're going to have a pretty good crop of peas. You can actually see the little peas inside. Those require a little more work to serve. To serve the snow peas, you basically just string them like you would a string bean. Cut off the ends, wash them, and you're good. They're edible right then. With the shell peas, you do have to take off the string on the shell peas. But with the shell peas, you take off the string and then you open the pod and take out the peas, and that's what you serve. We're still picking garlic scapes, and they need to all come off within the next week or so. And again, you can use those for pesto. Today we're going to use some of them. Or, I think they're kind of neat, and I have them also used in flower arrangements. This little thing at the top is called a bulbo, and what it will do is form little teeny garlic cloves, and if you let a couple of them go to seed and then plant those, in 2 years you'll have more garlic. You can either plant the bulbs or you can plant these little bulbos once they go to seed. We'll let a couple of them go to seed and show you their progress as we go. Salad season is upon us. All that lettuce we planted and we're so hungry for in April has become edible and needs to be consumed. Needs to be cut, and I'm going to pick some. I'm going to make a salad with it. This is a lettuce called Merlot. As you can see by its color, it's a nice red. Up here we have butterhead lettuce, and we can pick whole heads of it. I plan to share some of this with the Norfolk Food Pantry. If you have extra things growing in your garden that are ready and more than you can eat, please share it with the Food Pantry. They will appreciate getting it. This is that mescalin mix that we planted, and these are stronger flavored herbs and greens. It can also go in the salad. Pick a few of those. And it also had a lettuce component, so I'll pick some of that as well. So many different types of lettuce are available. Colorful, streaked, spotted. A lot more than just iceberg. This one is red sails. It has a red tinge to it. It also stands up pretty well in the garden. This is a new one to me. It's called a deer tongue. I guess it's because of the shape of the leaves. So we have so many different ones to choose from, and you can have a fresh salad every night, all summer. The next thing I want to do is thin the kale. I let that go way too long. It needs to be 6 or 8 inches apart. So what we're going to do is start pulling out those that don't fit into our pattern. Actually, a foot apart might even be better. But we don't have to waste this kale. We can cut off the root part and have the kale for dinner. There are many, many kale recipes. It's popular in smoothies now, all kinds of things. So the thinnings are very useful, and then we'll be able to pick the kale right in, hopefully through fall, when we get it all thinned out here. And I'll continue thinning this a little later, but it does need to be done. If you keep picking, things keep producing. But I did plant a lot of kale because I like it frozen. We use it all winter frozen. And we'll be showing you how to prepare it for freezing a little later. This time of the day is not the best time to be preparing all of these things and picking them. It's hot, and it's better if you can get out early in the morning or later in the evening when things are a little cooler. Things are a little limp right now because it is hot. I've already thinned down my parsnips, some of the cabbage family, and also the beets have been thinned, so they're several inches apart. Tomatoes. And in order to tie something to a stake, I use pieces of old nylon stocking. And you figure eight it around the stem of the tomato. And then tie a nice square knot around your stake. And that'll hold it in place. Now the other thing that many people do with tomatoes is prune them. This one's starting to set fruit. This one has some spots that can be pruned out, I think. I probably did it already. Between the leaves, you'll find little shoots growing, and perhaps the one in front is a little better for that. It forms secondary shoots that kind of come off between everything, and you want to get rid of those, and it'll keep it from sprawling. Again, I'm going to have some sprawlers here, but there are some you can pick. You want to leave enough foliage on the tomato so that your fruit doesn't sun scald, but you do want to keep it from being too rampant. Here's one we can take out. So you just pinch back those little growing tips between. Here's a good one. Just right between. This will keep it from, here's one right here. This is a very good example. And it's right in the middle between the main stalk and a side stalk, and we'll just pinch it out. And continue doing that throughout the season when you see them. And that will keep your tomatoes a little bit in bound and help with fruit size, hopefully along the way. Now, in order to water the tomatoes, I've set up this system. I got these ends a number of years ago, I think from Gardener's Supply, and cut off a 2-liter soda bottle. Fits in the top of them, and it just screws right in. And we put that in the ground next to each tomato. And I'll put one here. You can't see it in the tomatoes because the foliage pretty much covers it up. But you put a little sand in this to fill it up, to slow down the flow. And I've done that with each of the tomatoes. And then it's time to fertilize them. It's also time to fertilize roses that have had their first flushest bloom. Those roses that will rebloom, I'm using seaweed fish fertilizer, and I'll add that to my water, 1/4 of a cup to 2 gallons, and then I'll just fill up these soda bottles. I'll use the fertilizer maybe once a week and water other times and try to keep it saves on water. You're not watering weeds this way, you're watering the roots of the tomato plants. This will gradually go down into the roots of the tomatoes and give it some needed water. Some go a little faster than others. Sometimes you need to take them apart and redo them, add more sand. But you get the idea. It helps water them. You can also use these if you go on vacation and have window boxes. Some people just use a soda bottle that they've cut off, but you can also get the spikes to put in on the bottom of the bottle. And then you fill it, and it will help water for the weekend. Window boxes, particularly in the sun, will dry out very quickly. So will hanging baskets, especially if we have a breeze and it's very warm and they're in the sun. They need to be watered daily. If you're not there and don't have someone to water them, you can add these and it will help them stay alive for a couple of days. Now let's get out of the sun. Go back and work on the garden. I'm going to hang these herbs for drying, and I'm going to use a piece of wire. Christmas tree hooks work really well too. Christmas tree ornament hooks work extremely well, but you can fasten it to the rubber band. And I use a clothes drying rack in order to dry herbs. I will bring this inside actually for my drying and put it in a back bedroom that is cool and dark, fairly dark. It doesn't get a lot of sun, and very dry, because if I left it out here with the humidity, they would be more likely to mold and mildew than to dry. But I'll take this inside and use it for my herbs, put some newspaper underneath so that any pieces that fall from them won't get on the floor. But it makes a very good herb drying rack. You can buy an herb drying rack, I'm sure, but this seems to work very well. And then you can use it as a laundry drying rack too, when your herbs have completely dried. We'll check on those again later after they've dried and what we can do with them. Now we're going to build a scarecrow. I've already started, and actually she's been around for several years, but needed to have a little work done. A little plastic surgery, as it were. And I built a frame, and the frame was built with pieces of old tomato stakes. I've tried to use recycled items to build this scarecrow. Bought nothing new. I had packing material around here to give her a little shape, an old pillow in a trash bag, and some grocery plastic bags stuffed into another grocery plastic bag around the top. Her head is an olive oil bottle that's been wrapped in bubble wrap. And then I've used other packing material that came with various packages I've received to wrap around her body to give it a little shape. We're going to put a piece of an old pillowcase that I sewed together over the top of the olive oil bottle. with the seams along the sides. I've slit the olive oil bottle base so that it'll fit over the wood, and then I screwed some of the extensions down to the wood frame so that her head wouldn't bobble around. And we can tuck in the little top corners so she doesn't have cat ears. And we'll bring this down in front. Now I used some extra quilt batting I had on the arms and knee-high pantyhose or stockings. Go over that for her arms. They stretch pretty well, generally stay on. I don't know if it'll scare a crow or not, but we'll try. My tip of the day, if you use packing tape and has been frustrated like I do with the end snapping back, I did use some of the packing tape to hold her in place in various spots. Put a piece here. But my tip of the day is to use a pencil to hold your place. That way you won't have it snap all the way down and be lost when it comes time to put it away. If you're using multiple pieces, you don't want to spend your time just finding the end of the packing tape. And the pencil works very well until you can come back to it and give it a good fold down to hold that end in place so you don't have to spend hours looking for the end. Next, let's put on a skirt. This is a very old skirt, not in very good shape because it's been used on the scarecrow before, but we'll wrap it around her nonetheless. Fasten that on with a couple safety pins. And then an old t-shirt, and she's almost ready for the garden. I had no idea what measurements to use when I made this, so I measured my own arms and my shoulders. I've had people talk to her in the garden thinking she was me. Hopefully I look a little better than this much of the time. And I also made the arms move so it was easier to put clothes on her. Using a stretchy shirt helps too. Hopefully we can get this on. You can use any old shirt or pants or whatever you have that's in need of recycling. There's just starting to look like she might be a person. We'll dress her up a little. If you want, you can put hair on her. This is more packing material, Excelsior. You can glue that on with either hot glue or other type of glue. You can add an old piece of curtain for a tie. Maybe this will flap around and keep some of the birds out of the garden, out of the raspberries. We'll see. Then she needs some gardening gloves. Stand up here a little better. The wind's blowing. I'll put another one on this hand. These are gardening gloves that I got and then didn't care for. They were too stiff to use. I'm going to fold this arm up. There's probably a screw that can be tightened at some point in here. We'll fold it up and give her a basket of flowers to hold. The gloves will need to be wired on at some point. And an old garden hat. Only thing left is face. So we need to give her some eyes and a mouth. Be as fancy as you wish here. I'm going to keep it simple. And there's our scarecrow, ready to go into the garden. Some years I put chicken wire wings on her and she's a garden angel, but this year I decided to not put the wings on as she's going to be fairly close to the raspberries and I didn't want to get stuck in the chicken wire as I picked my berries. So there you have it. There's a garden angel. We're going to, when it cools off a little in the garden, fasten her to a stake which I've driven into the ground by wiring the post below into it, digging a little bit around the edge and burying it about 1.5 feet. And then digging it in. And we have our scarecrow. Don't know if it'll do any good, but you never know. It'll at least amuse people that happen to come by. Okay, now it's time to go into the backyard. Okay, we're ready to do some cooking. And the first thing we're going to make is some garlic scape hummus. Hummus is made with chickpeas. I've washed and drained the chickpeas. And we're going to add cut up garlic scapes. This is about a dozen, and I just used the tenderest parts of them. You can kind of tell when you're chopping them what's tender and what is not. We're going to chop that. Lemon juice, about half a lemon's worth, olive oil, 1/3 of a cup, some salt, and continue the process. It forms a nice paste. it down a little bit, and you can see it's turning into a nice, colorful hummus. It seems like in these episodes I've used my food presser quite a lot, but that's true. I do use my food processor quite a lot. It's just something that is in the kitchen and gets a lot of use. I don't use it for everything, but I do use it quite a lot. For making, in the summer particularly, for pestos and hummus. Salad dressings. Put that down, and we can put this over with some toast points I've made to serve with it. Traditionally, you would serve pita bread crisps with it, or slices of pita bread. The next thing we want to work on are those salad greens. And I did put them in water right away. And this is how I wash the salad greens. I immerse them in cool water. And this is the bowl to my salad strainer, salad spinner. And the salad spinner, in my estimation, is one of the best things that was ever invented, because it really makes it easy to have a nice crisp salad. These greens, just in the short time between when we picked them a few minutes ago and this time, the time I got them into the water, have started to get a little limp, but they will come back. Cold water helps. At this point, I go over them and take off any stems that I don't want. If any leaves are damaged, we can take those out. If you pick the whole bunch, you can separate that into leaflets. If the leaves are too large, you can break them up. There's all sorts of lettuce and greens in here. Some arugula. Again, I'll take the tough inner stem out of that one. You'll notice I'm always lifting them out of the water, and that's an important thing to do. Don't drain the water off. Lift your greens out. Then any dirt that's on the leaves, this is true of fruit as well, goes to the bottom of the bowl, not the top of the bowl, with the leaves of lettuce. If you just drained it, your dirt would be in your lettuce and not drained off. This is particularly important for spinach. Spinach, even spinach you buy, sometimes tends to be quite dirty, and you really need to get it clean. Nobody likes a gritty salad. Having straw mulch also helps with the dirt splashing on the leaves of lettuce when it rains. those scraps will go in the compost. Now, we don't get rid of this water. We put it in a plant or two. Use it to water your plants. This saves on water. Water's perfectly good. And then I've got another pitcher of water over here because I'm going to do the whole thing again. I'm going to fill the bowl. And again, swish them out. I've already gone over them, so basically I don't need to do that again, for the most part. But they're ready to be put back into the spinner basket. Again, always lifting them from the water. We'll water a few more plants. And we're ready to spin the salad dry. If you don't have a salad spinner, and for years I didn't, I would wrap the lettuce in dish towels and then put it in the refrigerator to crisp and dry. This is much easier. Just spins it around, dries it. This model has a break on it. And you'll find it's pretty dry. Now, I will still put this in the refrigerator, and in fact, right now it's ready to go into bags in the refrigerator if we weren't using it for salad. We just put it in plastic bags in the crisper compartment, and it would be ready. Once the salad is complete, I will be putting that in the refrigerator to crisp up. Now the fun part comes with add-ins. We've got all kinds of things we can add to this salad. We can add peppers, red peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes. You can either slice them or I've chopped them here. Green onions. It might be easier for those. And radishes. These are the last of the radishes from the garden. I've got a new crop planted. A little yellow pepper. Peppers come in a variety of colors, and they can all add some brightness to a green salad. And there are some other things we can add. I'm going to add some feta cheese to this salad. We could just as easily have added blue cheese. I had some of that out. And a few toasted walnuts. Walnuts are good for you. And they add a nice crunch to the salad. You could also use some almonds or pecans, depending on the salad and the mix of vegetables. And there are some of the add-ins. Now we're going to make some dressing for that salad. And this is probably the easiest dressing to make. I don't buy commercial dressings. I looked at the ingredients and decided those aren't things I want to consume. So I generally make our dressings, and there are a lot of different recipes, but this one is one I come back to frequently. You can add your snow peas to the salad too. It's 3 tablespoons of oil. I'm using a light olive oil. We have nice fresh greens. You can also use a more pungent olive oil. I'm going to use wine vinegar, 1 tablespoon. then a tablespoon of water. And that's the formula. A tablespoon of water, a tablespoon of vinegar, and 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Then you can add the seasonings of your choice. I'm going to add a little Italian seasoning. You can also add your own herbs. You can add Parmesan cheese to this. You can add all sorts of things. Typical dressing includes a little Dijon mustard, and you can also add that. I use an old jar, mix my salad dressing in, and then we just shake it up before serving. And this makes enough for a salad that size. Again, if you want to make more, you can alter the proportions, and just remember it's 3-1-1. 3 oil, 1 of vinegar, and 1 of water. And that could be 6 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons, and 2 tablespoons. Just divide it by the amount you want to make. This makes probably a third of a cup of dressing. And I won't add that to my salad until right before it's served, and then we'll toss that together and serve the salad with the dressing. I'll keep it covered and in the refrigerator until then. For dessert, I've made a few things from the garden. We've made some lemon shortbread tarts. It's 4th of July coming up, so I made a 4th of July arrangement. Used some pinwheels, some garlic scapes. They look kind of like fireworks to me. And also these are the flowers that came on the lovage plants. It makes an interesting arrangement. You can garnish any of your plates with a little mint. We've got plenty of that out in the garden. This is orange mint. The tarts are just fresh fruit in a shortbread crust, and I've used some Chambord liqueur and currant jelly melted and brushed on the top of them. The little cookies are a recipe for Mandelbrot that I have. It's generally quite plain. It has cinnamon sugar on top and pecans is the filling. However, this time I divided the dough in 2, and I added to 1 portion of it lemon herbs, lemon verbena, lemon thyme, and lemon balm. And then I added some almonds to that to give it a lemon flavor. The other half of the dough I used chocolate mint and mini chocolate chips. So we have 2 kinds of cookies from 1 dough. And Mandelbrot and biscotti are very similar. One comes from Italy, one comes from Germany. But they're a very similar cookie. It's a hard cookie, often eaten for dessert or with coffee. And there you have it. This has been A Walk in the Garden with Liz Davey on NCTV in Norfolk. Please join us next time as we continue our walk through the season in the garden at my home.
Thank you.